we are with our revamped and revitalized look into how to play each of the nations. This video is going to cover the Air Nation, one of the most tactical and adaptable elements in the game. It is truly a game of your choosing. And should you elect to make it so, no two games with Air need to be the same because they have such a diverse array of abilities. Whether you are manipulating the weather or the advantage card has been played by your opponent, you can jump on just about every opportunity in the game. It just depends on what you want to prioritize. They have massive aggressive potential and huge movement on the board. They have a tier 1 double general movement. They have a tier 2 triple tile movement with all of their military. And so you will find that they are able to capitalize on killing bosses or, more importantly, killing your opponent right off the board. Let's dive into their other abilities on what is truly an S tier element with very few bad matchups. Here we are taking a look at the Air Nation's abilities, and Air is a spicy one. It has been picked or banned, and I want to say over 90% of our competitive games when making, or as of making this video, they've received 3 consecutive nerfs, both to abilities and to their large cards themselves. So as the Air Nation, what are we looking for? Well, we're looking for opponents that we can kind of take advantage of at the turn 3, turn 4 position because they have a lot of big play potential. And it's not just in those early turns. They've got great late game potential as well. But their real asset is their adaptability in the tier 2 state. And you'll see that with their abilities. We're not seeing too many options. And yet, every game you play Air, it really does feel like a totally unique one because of how adaptable this tier 2 position is here in the middle. And so what are we looking for? Well, we draw power from our fields. And actually, we don't actually have this field bonus anymore in terms of our attacking. That is removed. That's gone. Haven't even put in the new card yet. That's how fresh it is. But we do get increased food production and increased building material production from deserts and fields. And so we're looking for corners with deserts and fields, right? This would be a beautiful corner for Air right here. I've got a good mix of BM. I've got 2 great fields for my food production and cheap building material producing tiles on the short side, deserts. Really good stuff for Air. But let's take a look at their abilities. We want to look at some weaker bosses because we've got some great early game potential, but the moment that our opponent makes any kind of mistake in terms of their position on the board, Air can take advantage. That's where their real strength is. And so Tailwind is their central tier 1 ability, and it's going to be more important than ever now that we've lost this field increased dice roll. Tailwind is going to allow you to blow the wind in any cardinal direction, north, south, east, west. And permanently for the rest of the game, any player that attacks in that direction is going to get a +1 added onto their dice roll. That doesn't feel like much, but in terms of eliminating RNG against bosses or an opponent, it's a really, really big deal. But other abilities synergize around it as well. And so Tailwind effectively allows you to just choose your target on the board. And it's a really fun way of declaring your opponent and really just saying, hey, it's going to be you and me. Let's see what you can do about it. And so it's really, really fun. But an ability that just recently got nerfed but is still so instrumental to their early game is Gust. They've got 1 general or a few pesky soldiers sitting on your short side. Blow them off of that tile, but now the opponent gets to pick where they go. So if we're looking at this desert, they've got soldiers on this lake, and of course their capital would be right here behind this mountain. We just will gust these soldiers from the lake onto the mountain, and we'll take the lake for ourselves and be simply 2 tiles away from their capital. That's great early game potential for us, and just recently got nerfed. In terms of their other tier 1 ability that I'm going to take almost every single time, it's going to be Light-Footed. Getting that early game pressure with our general, not forcing me to purchase barracks and spawn an extra soldier, that's saving me effectively 6 resources on turn 1, 3 food and 3 BM. And then I'm just going to let the general do the purchasing for me. This is especially viable if I'm in the 10-10 or 13-13 position. Air doesn't have the best economy. They don't have a bad economy by any stretch. But this is going to allow the general to do all of the heavy lifting in your opening turn and get your economy situated. Swift to the Front is a great card, an absolutely great card, but it's much better suited for when your matchups are more slow and you can pounce on them with 2 barracks and spawn 2 armies from them and jump on your opponent when they're not expecting it. That's not a really common play for Air. These are certainly going to be your bread and butter tier 1 cards, and so that's what we're rolling with. And then tier 2, it's really on you and what the name of the game is for you. You've got abilities that synergize off of Tailwind that are phenomenal. Warm Front is going to triple that effect, so your +1 goes from +1 to +3, and I think this card is going to be much more common now that they've lost their field dice roll bonus. We've got Cold Front, which is going to halt the movement on the entire board moving against your win. That is a really, really big deal. And so, are you going to take both of these cards as affiliated with your Tailwind for the simple fact that you get to aggress upon that opponent really, really hard? But also understand that when you Cold Front and when you Tailwind, let's say that we're blowing it in this direction. This is our opponent that we have elected for ourselves. We are also impacting this opponent over here. We are greatly enhancing the viability of this opponent attacking this opponent over here. And so, there are consequences to our decisions even in that. But these are great abilities if we want to go with a Tailwind, more aggressive focus. But on top of that, Air can be super tactical. And like we said, able to pounce on an opponent the moment that they make a misstep. Fleet of Foot. Our general in the units on his tile may move 3 tiles this turn. Or if you are moving to a tile that is neutral, you could purchase it, buy a barracks, and then move soldiers from that tile to the next tile. That's 4 tiles of movement in Tier 2. Massive. That could be a kill. But then you've got more tactical cards. And Shifting Winds, you can change the Tailwind, but I would only ever suggest this if you're going to eliminate an opponent and then go for someone else. It's not really viable. It used to be way more viable, but really these are our other 4 options. These are our other options we're going to go with here. I don't see any situation where I'm not taking Fleet of Foot. We're absolutely always taking that. We could enhance the economy, double a food-producing tile to give us more soldiers or more building materials. That's great. Kind of hard to argue with doubling the resources if it's a rainforest, an oasis, whatever. That's really hard to argue with. But these other cards are so disruptive to the opponent. If a weather event is drawn that really disrupts your opponent's play, well, you can reactivate that ability. And on top of that, you get to know what the next 5 weather events are, and you can put them in any order you'd like. You can put the cards that would really hurt you on the bottom, and they might not even get drawn. The game might be over by that point. You know, there's lots of weather cards that span 2 turns, and these games are typically only going 7 or 8 turns, and so 5 cards away is a really, really big deal. But on top of that, if we've got a bunch of S-tier advantage cards being played, well, we get to put 3 of those back into our hand. This is not always the best play. A lot of the times, people save on to their best cards for their big play, and by then, it's just too late to stop them from winning the game. Bird's Eye View is that card that goes perfectly in the middle. I would say this is the safer card, but Bird's Eye View has the opportunity to disrupt an opponent before they actually utilize that advantage card. The absolute advantage card Fiend would take both of these cards in Tier 1. Because not only do I get to look at all of my opponent's hands and make a new hand of advantage cards, I can then immediately replay them again. You're thinking of cards like Bull by the Horns, Friendly Dragon, that sort of thing, that just get you win conditions in the end of the game. This is a really viable strategy for you. And so super, super flexible for Air. And then we get to their Tier 3. Their quest is not that good. And the reason why is because the rest of their kit is so, so good. And so what are we going to take? Well, typically, Zephyr, we're going to go for bosses as the Air Nation. If I've got a weaker boss in the corner that I'm starting with, like Monsoles, this is something I'm going to probably try to pursue in the opening turns. And then Tier 3, whatever the state of the game is, whoever's going against who, I can teleport to another boss on the board and immediately fight it. I don't get the effects of Tailwind or anything like that, but I can snake a kill, especially if I couple that with other advantage cards that are super relevant to killing bosses. Well, then the Zephyr is going to be a guaranteed win condition for that. High Road is going to allow my units to attack twice in the same turn. Upon winning a battle, those units may immediately attack again 1 tile away. So down here on the short side, when we just gusset our units, our enemy units into the mountain, we can then eventually attack it, and then if we win this battle here, we can attack their capital and win the game, essentially. And then lastly, our Tier 3, we've got a couple options here. Walking on Air is going to allow our general to move through any number of owned or neutral tiles. This doesn't sound that powerful at the Tier 3 stage of the game, but understand that when an opponent is eliminated from the game, all of the tiles that they owned fall neutral, which means you're going to have a lot of unoccupied land, and your general is going to be able to cruise through it, maybe to snag the last star tile you need to win the game. But if you want to go with a safer option that is going to be a bigger late game threat, I would say, if you don't see anyone dying, then with the current, it's going to allow your units to move 2 tiles in the direction of Tailwind. Very powerful effects for a very, very powerful Air Nation. That's the look.